Good morning, Patty. I'd like to thank you for having me on the air. First of all, I just want to say the news out of Newfoundland has been quite fascinating with the electric project, and it's in some ways it's interesting because, as you guys have seen in the last 96 hours, oil prices have plummeted. And the Newfoundland government had originally pegged oil prices at $65 a barrel. And they lowered that to $63. And they said, don't worry, everything will be fine. We'll post big surpluses and the world will carry on.
I don't think there was ever any comment about posting big surpluses based on their forecast. Before the last 2-week impact on oil, the average over the fiscal year was hovering around the $60 mark. So we weren't going to get pummeled on what the government put forward insofar as the original guesstimate of 65 rolled back to 63. But this latest 2 weeks of the slide or the slump or the bottom falling out of the price of oil is absolutely concerned. The big concern would be how long this lasts.
Well, I agree, and this is, I'm glad you guys have brought me on the air here today because I believe we're looking at a long-term oil glut. So short-term is what we saw this last week. What many people in Newfoundland are not considering is that Iran, the sanctions against Iran have slowly been unraveling, and Iran has been finding demand for their product in China and in Europe. And as Iran comes to the international oil market, that's going to further add to the glut of oil. And the other problem, which no one is talking about, is Libya has essentially been a basket case now for the last 5 years. And Libya is slowly getting its act together. And as you know, Patty, Libya was a very powerful former member of OPEC. And as Libyan oil supply comes to market, that's going to add to the glut as well. And that's in the sort of what I call in the short term. The medium term, what we've seen last week was General Motors unveiled 13 all electric vehicle models, which they're starting to put for sale next year in 2021. The Volkswagen Group, which is the largest or second largest automotive group in the world, is also going all electric. And Ford has unveiled their all electric pickup truck and their all electric Mustang. So we can see where the world is going in the medium term. And then you just have to examine this week. Tesla announced they just sold their 1 millionth electric vehicle. So that's a medium-term problem, which is also going to have extreme pressures, I believe, on the Newfoundland budget over the coming years. And then the longer-term problem that I see is there are multiple national bans on gasoline and diesel passenger vehicle sales that are starting to kick in next year and going all the way up to 2032. So, for example, in Bristol, England, they're not going to allow gas or diesel vehicles in their cities starting next year. The country of Norway is banning gasoline and diesel starting in 2025. The United Kingdom, which many people in Newfoundland visit on a regular basis, they had originally set a target date of 2035, and the British government 10 days ago announced that they were going to move that date up to 2032. So
the short-term, medium-term, long-term visions that you just spoke to, the point will be what? That the world is changing, we better change with it, because we've seen what that has meant for just the province of Alberta. They put all the eggs in one basket. And when you have a volatile commodity like the price of a barrel of oil and the geopolitical influences and the potential for a pandemic and everything else that can move the needle one way or the other on the price of a barrel of oil, being over-reliant on it is really a fool's errand.
Well, I tend to agree with you that not just Newfoundland, but Alberta, Saskatchewan, the federal government of Canada as well. I mean, as your listeners know, That money is used to pay for social programs and all of these kinds of things. And so it ties into this conversation that Newfoundland is having right now with hydroelectric power discussions, because as that glut of oil begins to happen and we start to see oil prices drop and we start to see, like right now, at last count, I believe I counted 16 countries which are going to be banning gasoline and diesel engines starting in 2021 and going up to 2032. And Australia is thinking of joining the ban in 2025. So with this big push for electric vehicles, in some strange kind of way, some of the problems that Newfoundland is facing today with hydroelectric power could end up becoming the long-term solution to many people's transportation needs. So I feel bad for what's happening in Newfoundland. I feel terrible what's happening in Alberta and Saskatchewan as well. I mean, I know the three provinces are suffering from these hits.
Yeah, and for a variety of different reasons. It just makes me think out loud about the critical thought, or the lack thereof, behind the whole Alberta wants to separate business. Can you imagine having to see the ebb and flow of the price of a barrel of oil, all the while reliant on it as a now landlocked nation, and thinking that oil is the only path forward? And now we see what happens, and this is not going to be the last time it happens. And the world is transitioning. It won't be tomorrow, but it is coming. And 10 years from now is just a heartbeat away. So I just really wonder if people who are gone hog wild with this whole Wexit business have had pause for thought. I'll let you wrap it up, Clinton, before I take a break.
I agree with you, Patty, on that. And, just to remind your listeners, Norway, Iceland, Sweden, Finland, Ireland, the UK, Denmark, the Netherlands, Spain, Mexico City, all of these bans are starting to take effect over the coming 4 to 5 years. And so this is just going to exacerbate this problem that oil-producing countries are going to be facing. So this kind of all ties into this conversation that Newfoundland has been experiencing over the last couple of days around hydroelectric power. So
it's certainly part of it. There's no doubt about that, Clinton. I appreciate you making time for the program. Stay in touch.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to you and your listeners.
Take care. Bye-bye, and you're welcome.